welcome back to The Outsider's Perspective. My name is Ollie, and here's your loaf of that sweet, sweet bread. Today's loaf comes to us from one of my all-time favorites, the Roman philosopher and playwright Seneca the Younger. And in this particular letter, he writes, "Some people boast about their failings. Can you imagine someone who counts his faults as merits, ever giving thought to their cure? So, to the best of your ability, demonstrate your own guilt. Conduct inquiries of your own into all of the evidence against yourself." In this passage, Seneca is talking to Lucilius in one of his letters, and he is saying that there are people who regard their flaws as qualities. He says some people brag about their failings. Can you imagine a person like that ever trying to improve? Of course not. Because in their mind, their failings are qualities. They have nothing to improve upon. So then he goes on to advise Lucilius. He says, "As for you, to the best of your ability, demonstrate your own guilt." He's saying, don't do what these other people do. Don't boast of your shortcomings and don't count your flaws as qualities. He says, find yourself in the wrong. Find yourself guilty. Demonstrate your own guilt. Conduct inquiries into yourself. Investigate your beliefs and your behaviors as if you were at first a lawyer and then a judge and then last of all, the person who is plea bargaining for your safety, for your early release. Approach yourself from all of these different angles and try to find yourself in the wrong. Try to find faults. Try to find flaws. Don't do what these other people are doing, because then you have no hope of ever being better. You have no hope of ever liberating yourself and improving and growing into the person you were meant to be. Because you're going to stay stuck if you count your flaws as qualities. You'll never move forward. You'll never grow. You'll never rise above all of the things that make you miserable. It's funny because I used to consider my arrogance and my temper to be qualities. I used to get enjoyment out of losing my temper, and I used to get enjoyment out of putting people down and making them feel small. So I understand what Seneca is talking about, because I used to count a lot of my flaws as qualities, and I used to be proud of them. And while that was the case, there was no way that I was going to overcome those flaws, because in my mind, these were not flaws. These were actually strengths or qualities, positive character traits. They weren't, but by convincing myself that they were, I was able to avoid the pain of honest introspection. I was able to avoid it for a time, but eventually it came back full force and I had to deal with it. And it would have been a lot easier if I had just dealt with it as it came up. But instead I gathered and accumulated all of this shame and embarrassment, and I refused to look at it until it was shoved in my face and I had no choice. And I had to admit that I was a douchebag, an insensitive, arrogant, stubborn, and ignorant. Did I already say ignorant? I'm definitely ignorant. Pig. That's what I was. So it's a handy defense mechanism to regard your flaws as qualities, but it doesn't get you anywhere, and eventually there will be a reckoning, and you will have to come face to face with those flaws, and you won't be able to deny their existence anymore, and you won't be able to rationalize and say that these are actually not flaws at all, these are qualities. I mean, being confident and brash is good, right? I mean, what's wrong with a little bit of self-confidence? I'm not arrogant, I'm just self-confident. Well, eventually those things don't work anymore. Eventually things come to a head. Pressure builds, something snaps, and then you have to come to grips with who you really are. So this is great advice for me, and it's great advice, I think, for a lot of people out there. Don't count your flaws as qualities. Don't boast about your failings. Try to find your flaws honestly, and to find yourself guilty, if you will, to use Seneca's words and his analogy. All right, well, that's it for me. Thanks for joining me, and live well, my friends.